Good morning, everyone. My name is Anissa Noor. I'm with Noor Skincare. Today we're going to be talking about how much do we really need to avoid the sun? How much SPF do we need to wear? A lot of times we get a lot of clients who are really curious about those questions, and we have a little bit of a different perspective when we look at the sun from a holistic perspective. And I have a very special guest who will be joining me today. Shannon Curtis. I'll have her introduce herself in just a minute. She'll be on. Hi, Dr. Curtis. How are you?
I'm good, Anissa. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Shall we call you Dr. Curtis? What do you prefer?
Shannon, whatever you prefer is fine with me. Yeah, pretty informal over here.
Great, great, great. I was just telling the audience, just to recap, that I was telling them about, we have a lot of clients who like to ask questions about how much sun should we get, how much should we avoid, how much sunscreen should we get. As you may know, our treatments are all based on regenerative skincare, resurfacing. We do a lot of layering, so clients sometimes get a little scared about coming to us because they are afraid of the sun. And we have a little bit of a different perspective on the sun. We have a holistic perspective on the sun, so we embrace the sun. And, I hadn't actually met you before, so I'm really excited to have you on. But I really, I've kind of followed your work, and I know that you have a similar perspective. So I thought it'd be nice to kind of have you on and talk about some of these things and why the sun is vilified, why we have these very sort of extreme perspectives on the sun, and what that might have to do with, the beauty industry, sort of, what their role is in making us feel like, we need to avoid the sun at all costs, and what that's done for us as a society as well, like how we view the sun, how it tends to, how it affects our health and all of that as well. So all of these topics, and it's free for all. So feel free to talk about, how you want, but let's introduce you. You're based out of Colorado, is it?
I am, and you're in Chicago, right?
We're in Chicago, yes.
I've never been to Chicago, so.
You'll have to come join us. You'll have to come visit us. It is cold about 8 months out of the year.
Is it cold right now?
No, it's really nice. This is the best time to visit if you were to. The summers in Chicago are great, and we have tons of summer festivals all over, so it's really.
That sounds so nice. I lived in Ohio and Pennsylvania before moving out to Arizona, and then made my way to Colorado. So I was kind of in that area, but not super close. I kind of know a little bit of that weather, but it's beautiful here. We have lots of sun, and I will say that my sun care, how I treat my skin in the Colorado sun, is definitely different than when I lived in Portland, Oregon. So where you live has an impact on your sun care as well. But I think we met this is our first face-to-face, but I think that we kind of met on Instagram about a year ago when I was doing a lot of speaking about the sun, because this time of year, a lot of my patients, my online clients, they're wondering about SPF, right? They're wondering about how to protect their skin. And as you said, I like that you mentioned like the sun has been vilified, because that is so true, right? We thrive off the sun. We're like human plants. We need the sun to thrive. We need it for our metabolism. We need it to support our lymphatic health, our immune system, vitamin D. It has innumerable benefits. And throughout our time on Earth, we've evolved with the sun, right? We don't see plants and, animals every couple of hours slathering on SPF, right? We don't see them doing that. We've evolved with the sun, and by evolving with the sun, we've evolved to have our own innate protective mechanisms to help prevent us against damage, right? Because sun damage is a real thing. But when we look at it from our perspective, from our holistic perspective, we're wondering, okay, well, is it really the sun that's causing the damage, or is it our bodies not being able to protect themselves the way we have evolved and adapted to protect ourselves anymore? Because one interesting fact, if you look at the research out there, one interesting fact is that, despite spending way more time indoors, despite being told by the beauty industry and dermatologists to put SPF on every couple of hours at higher and higher, SPF numbers, we are seeing an increasing number of skin cancer rates. We're seeing melanoma rise 3% every single year. And so when we play in these factors, we're like, okay, is it really just the sun, or are these underlying causes that are contributing to this to what's going on. So I like that we're on board with that, because it's just a huge conversation and it's so much more nuanced than wear SPF or don't wear SPF, right?
Right. And from what I'm understanding, a lot of my clients will tell me that their dermatologists will tell them they need to be wearing sunscreen even indoors because there's sun coming in from the window. And I tend to contradict that statement because I feel like, personally, I feel like that's ridiculous advice. Secondly, like you said, the sun is our greatest energy source. We need it for every single metabolic activity within our body. And we are now depleted and, you know, malnourished of vitamin D. And I don't know if you've come across some of the COVID studies that show that 80-something%, I think was one of the studies I came across, of the patients who ended up with some severe case of COVID had a vitamin D deficiency. And then when they were supplemented with that they healed. So there are a lot of reasons, but if you can touch a little bit upon, you know, allopathic medicine and why, you know, more what we call modern medicine and how it sort of disconnects this, you know, each organ from each other rather than looking at it as a whole, and how that affects, you know, people's views of, you know, how it's basically affected our mindset, but how that works, and, you know, why dermatologists sort of kind of look at just the skin and they treat the skin and they treat it topically, and then, you know, rather than holistically. In my own practice, and I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I'm not a doctor, but I do have a background in science. I have a background in chemical engineering, and I have worked in analytical, you know, chemistry and analytical studies. So scientific studies were something I would look at in my field, and I noticed that there is a type of design that is required when you know, put together a study, and how you perform it and how you carry it out, how you execute it, can be things that are moving parts. So sometimes people don't understand that. They feel that, you know, this is an authority in science, and I need to listen to this person, and this person knows it all. Whereas, you know, and we're told not to question things, whereas science is really about discovery. And one of the things I've noticed in my practice since I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've really learned more about just dealing with clients, like, you know, on a face-to-face basis and treating their skin, is that, you know, all of the things that we see manifest within our skin, which is a detoxification organ, are at least 80% internal mechanisms that are trying to escape, and possibly 20% or so external. And I see this, you know, I noticed that you mentioned this about acne. You treat it with, you know, different types of foods. And if you look at allopathic medicine, Western medicine, they will basically tell you, we don't really know the root cause of acne, what really causes acne. That's because they're not really looking within. And, you know, it's this, because this is a detoxification organ, it's trying to escape everything. And I see people with deep hyperpigmentation that have access to mold, that have had mold issues as well. So there's links there that you see that we haven't quite discovered in you know, scientific studies, because those studies are not being made, they're not being funded, they're not being done.
Yeah, they're not looking for that information.
They're not looking for that, so they're not going to find it. But when we see it in our practice, that's substantial, because we see these patterns all the time.
So many.
So I would love it if you could tell me a little bit about, like, you know, what your experiences are with linking these sort of like internal and external, and things that, you know, if you've noticed patterns with hyperpigmentation, because that's a big concern that people have with, I'm staying out in the sun, I have sun damage, and they're referring to hyperpigmentation as sun damage, which
as
is
an external source, right? As not their body's innate inner, right, defense mechanisms being able to protect. No, I love everything you said, because I resonate completely with that. A majority of the time, you know, there's some times, right, when you know, for whatever reason, our pores are bigger and we use a certain product and we get clogged pores. Like, sure, there's some times when it purely is external, but great majority of the time, anytime we have anything manifesting on our skin, it's because of an internal issue, because the skin's the outer boundary, right? Your body views your skin as like, okay, well, I'm not going to send that to my inner organs, my vital organs. I'm going to protect the brain. I'm going to protect the heart. I'm going to protect, you know, your nervous system, your lungs, everything. I'm going to protect everything before I protect the skin, because it wants to preserve all those vital nutrients, all those vital antioxidants for your vital organs. And so it's anytime there's anything manifesting on the skin, it's because something internal is out of balance and your body's like, I got to express it this way. And there are so many patterns, and you know, we can talk about a couple of them, but your skin expresses itself in patterns, right? Because your body can't communicate to you in words. So it has to tell you in symptoms. It has to tell you in a language that it knows, so that you can say, okay, this is what's going on. I really need to address this. And with the skin, you know, like you said, it's one of your organs of elimination. Just like your lymphatics move your cellular waste and environmental toxins like mold, and that gets to your liver, and your liver processes it, metabolizes it, and your kidneys excrete it via your urine, and you poop it out in your colon, and you even breathe some of it out. Your skin, it sweats, and that's part of its elimination function. But when it's overburdened, when any of those other organs are just, they're sluggish because they either don't have the nutrients and the nourishment that they need, or they're overburdened by environmental toxins, as you said, you know, anything from mold to glyphosate to the air we breathe. If we have too much coming in and it's not getting out efficiently, the body will use the skin. And that's a huge pattern that I see. And when it comes to just I'll name a couple simple patterns here, but body acne is huge. I'm sure you see that a lot in your practice. And often I see that is really related to sluggish lymphatic systems. And sometimes even, you know, we say, okay, don't go out in the skin if you have acne, or don't go out in the sun if you have acne. With body acne, just a little bit of moderate dose, non-burning sun exposure can be really helpful for lymphatics and vitamin D, and be useful for really all types of acne, but especially the body acne. I don't know if you've ever seen that before.
Yeah, for sure. I do tell my clients to go and, like, you know, enjoy the sun, even without sunscreen for, you know, a period of time, maybe under an hour. Of course, to use judgment, because we're seeing a pendulum shift from the 70s where people were lying out without any sunscreen, without any protection. And, you know, they're obviously developing, you know, various cancers and all of that related to their skin.
For sure.
And now we see the opposite. We see people just hiding indoors all the time, not getting any sun. And then, you know, well, on purpose, but then there's also their lifestyle now with COVID and people working from home.
Yeah.
Very little exposure that they're getting. And there is really no real, like, proper form of vitamin D that you can get that's not synthetic in, you know, in a pill form. You really need to get it from the sun. So I'll tell them, you know, to get a moderate amount of sun exposure, that it will help heal your skin. And, you know, there's a fear associated with that. And that, you know, that comes from everything that we've been told. And it's really kind of hard to dispel that, you know, I find. But one of the things I'll tell my clients is, if you put a baby out in the sun, they're not going to hyperpigment in certain areas. They're not going to get liver spots. That's really comes from a toxic load. Like you said, when these organs are overburdened, they tend to want to come out from, you know, through the skin. So, you know, the body it'll generate, the skin will generate an even tone tan, which is its mechanism that it turns on its own SPF. So I'll tell them that, but it's really, really hard to get them through that hump, because they want to, you know,
we've been told that so long, like, apply SPF all the time. And I mean, like you, I'm not advocating for zero SPF use. I'm not saying don't ever apply it. Like, I wear SPF on my face every day except for a certain period of time. And everyone has different risk factors. Everyone has different comfort levels, different skin types, live in different areas. Like, there's so many nuances. And we have to do what's comfortable for us, and we have to do what our sun tolerance is, because everyone can stay out for a different amount of time before they burn. And that's the thing, like, you do not want to burn. The burning is damage. The burning means that the, you know, UVA rays have penetrated, they've caused, you know, skin damage, and that's a risk factor. But no good research has shown that chronic non-burning, so like tanning, sun exposure, is a risk factor for things like melanoma. And that's really important, because the tanning is our melanin production. It's our body's defense mechanism. It's part of, what our body does. There's not good research to show that that itself is skin damage, even though a lot of organizations will say that is skin damage, because that ebbs and flows with the seasons, and it's the burning, it's the not having those defense mechanisms in place. If you're not able to tolerate or tan or tolerate the small bursts of healthy sun exposure, then that says that something is up with your body. And usually it points to, especially here in the US, metabolic dysfunction. That's huge. And almost everyone has some sort of metabolic dysfunction. And so, almost everyone needs then to wear SPF when they're out in the sun longer than, a short amount of time, but still getting that uninhibited. I like to say uninhibited rather than unprotected sun exposure, because we shouldn't have to protect ourselves from the sun, but there's a lot of reasons why now we're tending to have to do in some regard.
Right. Using judgment is key. That's what I tell people. You have a different, tolerance level than I do. I can be out in the sun longer. I know what my tolerance is.
Same.
But,
Yeah.
to not necessarily be afraid of it. But so what, so this kind of segues really well into the beauty industry. And of course, being opportunistic about, various studies that have shown up, or even funding these studies of SPF, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, we can talk a little bit about that if you have something to share about how you feel about, that, because it's not without purpose that we're being told, wear your sunscreen, wear your sunscreen.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Especially when there's not good research to show that it actually protects against skin cancer, especially so there's two types of SPF, as you know, the chemical and the mineral based, or the physical sunscreens. And there's not good research to show that the chemical sunscreens, the avobenzone, the octinoxate, all of those ones, oxybenzone, are helpful at preventing skin cancer, because the types of skin rays the types of UV rays that they block are UVB rays, the burning ones, not the UVA ones that go penetrate deeper and create more sun damage, wrinkles, increased risk of skin cancer. So that's the interesting part. You slather on these chemical SPFs, you don't burn, but the UVA rays are still getting down there. And oftentimes you stay out longer because you think, oh, I'm not burning, I'm good, right? I'm not getting any damage. But those are the people that are more at risk of damage, because their body isn't telling them, hey, it's time to go seek shade. It's time to go put on some protective clothing. It's time to go, take care of yourself and not get all the sun. And so there's actually been some studies done, those that get regular occupational outdoor sun exposure, unprotected, versus those that get unprotected recreational sun exposure, right? Or they just kind of burn, or they've done some with SPF and gosh, I'm not saying this correctly, SPF recreational, and so they didn't burn. And then they're showing that those who get the occupational exposure, the regular uninhibited, but it's in short bursts, healthy sun exposure, non-burning, are at less risk of melanoma. And so that's really important, because we're being told to put on this chemical SPF that, one, doesn't really protect us in the way that we've been told, and two, there's studies, lots of studies that have come out showing specifically oxybenzone, that is an active sunscreen ingredient, is carcinogenic and has been associated with skin cancer, which is crazy to think, we'd be slathering things on that can increase our risk for the very thing that we're trying to protect against. So I'm always an advocate for, when you use sunscreen, to use those mineral bases. I'm sure you are, especially the non-nanoparticle zinc.
Yeah, I don't even sell a sunscreen here. And when clients ask, I tell them to go buy a simple mineral-based sunscreen and just apply that. And that's what I use on us and our kids. But going back to these studies, what's really, I think, important to, information to convey to people is that a lot of the studies are actually funded by the companies themselves who are trying to sell the products.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know that, even though it may be obvious to us. I think people don't know that. And it's really important, I think, information for people to know that a lot of the studies that you find, or the information, the little tidbits of data that you see, or that you're given, come straight from the industry itself. And you're being told to, lather this on, lather that on, it's going to protect you, and we have a study to prove it. But it's really, really important to scrutinize that information. And hopefully there will be this paradigm shift of, you know, looking at it differently and maybe finding a happy balance from that pendulum shift where we were coming out of the 70s, like, you know, being in the sun all the time with no protection, and then the rises. And then, like you said, now people are seeing also an increase in various diseases that are metabolic disorders and whatever, because they're not getting any sun. So we need to find that sort of, the pendulum has to kind of, you know, kind of find its happy balance. I think.
I like that metaphor, because it is. It's not like one way or the other. There's definitely nuance to it. We're definitely an entire ecosystem, right? Like the Earth's ozone's being depleted, that plays a role in our sun exposure. Like there's so many different factors. It's all about, you know, taking care of the Earth's terrain, taking care of our own terrain, and making sure that we're nourished enough, that we're metabolically healthy enough, you know, that we have all of our defense mechanisms in place, and then knowing our own sun tolerance. And often that starts with morning and evening sun exposure, and then during the height of the day when, well, you do get more vitamin D during the height of the day, the 10 to 4, but that's also when the UVA rays and UVB rays are their strongest. So you have to be careful, but knowing your own tolerance. If you go out for 5 minutes and you start to get pink, great, that's your tolerance, 5 minutes. And you can slowly build up over time. And I know it's possible because I did it. When I lived in Arizona, I never went outside because it was so dang hot all the time. Right. And so I never did anything but burn when I was out for longer than 5 minutes. And I'm very pale, so I would burn easily.
And it's intuitive as well, right? Like if you look in the Middle East, you know, people are more so covered because you still get the sun exposure. You know, your body can absorb it, you know, even if it's just like one small part of your body exposed, and you're not going to want to go out in the height of the day, you know, at that, you know, where it is the hottest.
Exactly. Part. You want to seek shade during that time of day anyway. Like if we were, you know, many years ago and didn't have shelter, right, we would want to seek shade. So
exactly. We had a couple of questions. One question, it seemed, my friend Lisa, hi Lisa, joined, and she mentioned something about being afraid of wrinkles. And I think that one of the things that the sun does, and maybe you can talk more about this, is, you know, it does help to stimulate collagen production. So, you know, as far as wrinkles, yes, of course, there's a drying effect when you stay out too long, and, you know, you have to counter that with whatever hydration you need or moisturization within your skin or within your body or your cellular, at the cellular level. But the sun can be actually really good for wrinkles. So
it's so true. It's so true. I mean, all of the aging pretty much comes down to our own internal, like what is going on internally and how we're reacting to the sun. So the sun is like this middle player, right? It's not the root cause, but it's triggering things, imbalances that are already within us. So the same person could be out in the sun for the same amount of time as somebody else, and one person could show signs of aging faster based on what their own you know, predispositions are, based on how they're able to protect themselves, based on, you know, what, you know, all of those different factors. It's just so nuanced. But like you said, the sun is protective for many of these things. The sun does bolster our immune defenses, our, you know, our metabolism, our lymphatics, all these things that are really important. It reduces stress, makes us feel in a good mood, all these things that are really so vital for the health of our skin. And, you know, I know people are afraid of the skin aging, and a lot of that comes down to often too, like how we hold our face and muscular tension and, you know, squinting and, you know, frowning and like kind of all these different things that we can work with. Yeah, living, right? Living.
You know, I mean, people want to get rid of these lines all the time, and I'm like, you must be a happy person.
Yeah, you must smile a lot.
But there was another question Sonia asked, hi Sonia, about, can you give some examples of metabolic disorders you mentioned earlier?
Yes, that is a really good question. I should have clarified that. So the most obvious metabolic disorder that we can think of that's really common is type 2 diabetes. That's really common. Hypertension or high blood pressure is another one. And so that is kind of the far end of the spectrum. So even though that's really common, it's not like we get from being healthy to diabetes overnight, right? There's a spectrum of metabolic dysfunction that occurs before we hit that point where we're like we do your labs, you have really high blood sugar. There are these nuances of being what's called insulin resistant, which insulin is what gets your blood sugar into your cells. And that happens slowly over time. There's fluctuating blood sugar levels, fluctuating what we call markers of metabolism, right? Metabolic dysfunction. So how you, the levels of fat or cholesterol in your blood, your sugars, right? All of these different things. And when you're not metabolizing those things adequately enough because of most often diet and what you're eating, or often can be not getting out and getting sun, not getting movement, having more sedentary lifestyle, then that's those can lead towards metabolic dysfunction. And one study that's really famous has shown that in the US, 88% of American adults have some sort of metabolic dysfunction. So if we were going in, even if they don't have diabetes, we go in and we run all these tests, we show, okay, they do have insulin resistance at a cellular level. And that's really important because if 88% of American adults are struggling with that, 88% of American adults then don't have enough of those protective inner mechanisms to fully protect against the sun. So really when we're talking sun care, we're talking internal care and taking care of our health and eating what's right and moving and all those good things.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about diabetes as a metabolic disorder and not a disease, because I think it's empowering, and because there is it's oftentimes talked about in allopathic medicine as a disease. And to me, that feels like a death sentence in a way. Yeah. Whereas when you talk about it as a metabolic disorder, I think it's more empowering in that you have the ability to change those functions and to, balance the body, and the body will help balance everything, within it. It has that ability. And I think that's what we tend to take away agency from our own body.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Your body was made to heal. And if we can just remember that, like from anything, it doesn't matter what prognosis the doctor gives you, from anything, your body was made to heal. And even when it comes to skin stuff, right? Acne, hyperpigmentations, all those things, we think that those are permanent too. And the fact is they're not,
Yeah.
All those things. So
a great question that came up was what SPF is the highest SPF you want to go to before it becomes useless. And we did a blog post about this because there is actually an equation that you can plug into. And I think over 30% gives you something like 80-something%. I don't know the exact numbers offhand. Gives you 80-something% coverage. And then beyond that, it's incremental, smaller changes. So somebody wearing SPF 100, for instance, gets 96% coverage, whereas SPF 30 gives, or SPF 45 or 30 gives you 93% or something like that. So it's very little percentage, and it's more clogging. So I'll always tell clients not to wear anything more than 30, but to try to stick with something even lower, like 15 or 30. So what's your advice on that? That's
a good tip. I never thought, I guess that makes sense. I never have put anything really over 30 on my face, but anytime I put like 50 or something on my arms or something, it just doesn't feel right. But I don't know, I've heard that before. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think you're totally right. It's just very incremental once you get above 30.
Yeah.
But this is for me. Sorry, pardon? No, go ahead.
I was going to say I could repost the link when I'll tie it into this this video when we post it, so that people can have that information, because it's literally a formula.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great, Anissa. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm the same. I don't put anything over 30 on my own body. And I typically recommend, because above 30, you really don't get that many more benefits. And I think it's just a marketing above that. I know a lot of dermatologists, a lot of skincare enthusiasts will be like, put 50 on your face all the time. To be honest, I haven't noticed any of a difference. And in fact, the 15, can even work just as well if you're applying it more often. But this is my personal, what I do for my skin type and my sun tolerance. I used to freckle and burn really easily, and I don't really anymore because I've built up that tolerance. But I will get uninhibited or unprotected sun exposure in the morning and in the evening, so before 10 a.m. And I try to get it within, 30 minutes of waking, ideally around sunrise, because that's just so great for our circadian rhythm. You're not going to get any of those damaging rays when the sun is just like early in the sky. Same thing later on in the evening. And that helps regulate your circadian rhythm. It's not going to really give you much vitamin D, but it's so great for other things. And then in the height of the day, I will go out, you know, sporadically. And if I'm out for longer than, it depends what time of day it is, and it depends on like the overhead here, but longer than about 30-40 minutes, then I will put on a layer of like SPF 30. And depending on how long I'm out, I might only put it on like once or twice. If I'm going in water, I might put it on more, but I just feel my body. I see, am I getting pink? Do I, you know, my body can tell me what's going on with my skin and how much or sun protection I'm going to need, but that's going to be different for everybody.
Right. Judgment again. I think is really important to use in this case. You know your skin, you know your body. Listen to those cues. We've forgotten to tell human beings to listen to their bodies. It's like everything has become like a one size fits all, industry standard. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was internal healing, because when clients come to me and they talk to me about hyperpigmentation that they're dealing with, that's not just trapped within the layers of the skin, because sometimes there is like a melanin production that's a little bit that could be a response to, let's say, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, the body trying to heal something, and then that melanin gets trapped. And so when we do the resurfacing, that goes away. But then there's other types of hyperpigmentation that have been there for many years, or that are a result of something systemic. So we usually don't just treat the skin in itself, and that's the holistic method. I'll also give them a protocol to try to help clear their liver. So even something as simple as waking up and drinking, lemon water.
That's what I tell everybody. I love that too.
Yeah, it's so important. So I know that you post a lot of DIYs, you post a lot of teas, and then, I follow. I don't always, I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, like browsing, but I have noticed. So tell us a little bit about your tips that you like to tell people, how to cleanse the internal organs. What are some of the best herbs? What are some of the, your favorite, things to tell people?
Ooh, well, I really like the warm lemon water. So first off, we mentioned briefly at the start of this call about the organs of elimination, right? The skin being the last outer organ of elimination. And, that's how the body kind of expresses symptoms when everything else internally is bogged down. And so often skin is like, let's support those inner organs. Let's support your lymphatics, your liver, your kidneys, your gut. Let's make sure all of those are functioning optimally. You're pooping at least once or twice a day. All of these different factors are at play so that things are moving really well. And if things aren't moving really, really well, say you're not pooping once a day, you're not drinking enough water, I'll start there, because we need to make sure the kidneys and your colon are open and functioning and draining properly before we go pushing things from the liver and lymphatics. And if those are both moving properly, and that's often very simple to address, and then we'll move on to liver support, because 9 times out of 10, maybe even more, with acne or any sort of skin issues, hyperpigmentation, age spots, things like that, the liver does need support, because our world is filled with so many chemicals, and we're asking our livers to do so much more than they ever have before. Combined with, recreational drinking or using medications from time to time, our livers are really struggling. And so, the warm lemon water is really helpful in the morning. Sometimes I'll have my patients or my clients rub castor oil over their abdomen about 3 times a week before they go to bed. Sometimes apply heat, and that's a really good stimulator of liver function. And then in terms of herbs, I have a tea blend on my Instagram page. It's on my herbal recipes highlight on the top of my page. I call it my Jupiter detox tea, because I'm really into astrology, but it's a combination of a few key herbs that are really helpful for liver function, lymphatics, all those. It's burdock root, dandelion root, licorice, yellow dock root, orange peel, ginger, cinnamon, and am I forgetting one? I top it off with some red clover at the end, because red clover is so helpful for lymphatic acne, especially that around the neck. So that's a blend. It's tasty, it's delicious, it's really gentle, and I typically have my patients drink it at first, just kind of generally once or twice a day, make a quart of it and drink half of it each day. And then if there's a big breakout or something, you can drink a little bit more.
A breakout, you mean like acne?
Exactly, yeah, like acne. If all of a sudden you get a big cystic breakout, that can be really helpful to drink up to 3 or 4 cups.
Yeah, maybe we'll highlight your. Did you have a picture of it posted on Instagram?
I do. I have it somewhere in a post recently. I think it was a couple weeks ago, and then I also have it on a highlight.
Okay, so we do a food highlight, so maybe we'll copy that
Yeah.
and post it. I also just recently made a dandelion green salad, which is not really it's not really used that much, I think, in the West and in America, especially because the dandelion greens tend to be kind of bitter. But it's amazing. I mean, it was amazing when you prepare it properly because you have to
Mhm.
soak it in a salt water, in a salt bath, and then just kind of, you know, squeeze it out and then chop it up. And we did it with couscous and feta and
Mm.
lemon and you know, I use also black seed oil and oregano oil in our dressings, and that can be really great for parasites. If you have parasites in your gut, that can really just kind of kill everything off. So we'll post a couple recipes. And yeah, this has been a really great conversation. Is there anything else we want to touch on, or do you want to touch on anything else? I don't want to make it too long as well.
No, I think this is great. I think the big takeaway is just don't fear the sun, and then just trust your body when you're getting skin issues and know that your body knows how to heal. We just need to give it what it needs. And often that's nourishing the body. And we can see the sun as a form of nourishment too. We just have to be very aware of our sun exposure and know what's best for us. And it's not one size fits all. So I think
Right,
that's a key
to use our
takeaway.
judgment and to, you know, to really kind of, for us, you know, smaller individuals, these independent sort of, you know, people fighting for the sun, we need a paradigm shift, you know, and I keep
Mhm.
talking about paradigm shifts, but I think we need a new way of thinking about things. And we
Yeah.
need a new way of thinking about our own bodies, our own healing capacities, the sun, you know, how we relate to nature. Like you
Yes.
mentioned earlier, and I love that animals aren't lathering sunscreen all over themselves, you know, every hour. So you know, we don't need to be afraid of everything. You know, our bodies have the capacity to regenerate, to heal. My entire practice is based on regenerative skincare, so I'm
Mhm.
trying to drive that point home. And it was really great that, like, even not having really met you, and we've only messaged, that you have such similar views on that, and I really appreciate that. So let's tell everyone how to find you. I know you have like a serum line, so how can we, you know, what are the best ways to look you up? And if someone wanted an appointment, how do they book with you?
Yeah, so you can find me here on Instagram at dr.shannoncurtis. You can also check out my website. My website is wildrootsalchemy.com. And on my website, you can find a link to my skincare line, which at this point is their facial serums. So they're useful at the end of your skincare routine. Great for acne prone skin, these specific types of oils. And if you're interested in doing consults, I do see patients in person and virtually here in Boulder, Colorado. If you live outside the state, I do run an online group program called Naturally Radiant Skin, and actually enrollment starts in just another week and a half. So if you're interested in that, you can shoot me a DM on here and we can chat about it. I'd love to have anyone who wants to be a part of it be a part of it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. And we have, I think it's a great complement to what we do as well. As many of you know, we have in-house treatments in Chicago at our spa, and we also have a line. So look both of us up, follow us both, and we thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Dr. Shannon.
Thank you,
And
Anissa.
soon. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for this
Thank
conversation. It
you.
was so great
Bye-bye.
to meet you in person.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye bye.